For analysis on the situation, we turn now to Sara Yael Hirschhorn. She's a historian and political analyst at the University of Haifa. Thanks again for joining us, Sarah. Now, it's been a week since Hamas attacked Israel. Expectations are now for a ground operation, air and sea as well, by the Israeli army in any moment. How might this change things, do you think?
Well, I think in the initial phase of the operation, the attempt will be to stabilize the Strip, to decapitate Hamas leadership and disarm any Hamas rocket launch pads, terrorist cells at operational capacity, as well as to try to launch some kind of extraction effort of the over 120 confirmed hostages that were taken by Hamas militants last Saturday into the Gaza Strip. But what I think has many concerned is not only the grave humanitarian cost to Gaza and Gazan civilians in particular, as your reporting has mentioned, that have very few options to escape this ground invasion as well as aerial assault, but also what the long-term strategy is for Israeli forces as well as for the Israeli government. Are there aims to reoccupy the Gaza Strip for the longer term? Is that truly feasible? And certainly, will the opinion hold should that be the course of action that Israel decides to pursue?
And if Israel, or when Israel pursues this next stage of their military offensive, could this potentially persuade Hezbollah to be more deeply involved in the conflict? And if they are, what could that mean?
Well, I think President Joe Biden's message earlier this week to other actors that if you were thinking of getting involved, don't, was certainly signaled directly towards Hezbollah and to its Iranian backers to stay out of the conflict. But we have seen some intermittent activity on the Israeli-Lebanese border, and there certainly are fears that Hezbollah, which is far better armed and equipped than Hamas and has much more sophisticated ability to attack Israel, could join in a two-front war that could expand more largely to a regional war between Iranian-backed proxies and Israel. And this is certainly a very serious and worst-case scenario outcome.
And of course, we know that Blinken is in the Middle East on his 7-country tour. How crucial are these meetings between Blinken and Arab leaders, and what could or should Arab leaders be doing at this point?
Well, I think our Secretary of State, Anthony Blinken, is trying to engage all partners in the region, not only Israel and the Palestinians, especially because some of these Arab states have the possibility to mediate with Hamas in a way that Israel and the United States does not, to free hostages and generally to de-escalate the conflict at the moment, is extremely important. But what Secretary of State Blinken can really expect from these governments at this time that have, for the most part, offered only rather tepid statements regarding the activities of the past several days and have generally been seeking to stay out of the conflict, especially Egypt, which has refused to open a humanitarian corridor to even allow Gazans to escape into safer territory, remains to be seen. I also think that there should be stronger calls upon Qatar and other governments that are harboring Hamas leadership to throw them out of their territory and to generally understand the stakes here, to broaden into a regional war and, in fact, a kind of proxy war in the Middle East between the United States, Israel, and their Middle Eastern allies and Iran, and to really understand what time it is to get on the right side of history.
The US has shown its unwavering support for Israel. Do you think that the international community at large should stand by Israel, regardless of its policies, in the name of revenge?
I think this isn't a moment for revenge. I think this is a moment to provide deterrence for a future, against another attack like we saw last Saturday. The choices that Israel and the United States and, frankly, other Western democracies face against terrorism are very stark, and it is necessary to stand behind Israel in preventing the further Hamas intent on destruction. Yet at the same time, I think the United States is more quietly signaling messages to the Israeli government and the IDF about the interest of democratic values and the kind of moral codes and rules of engagement that the United States and other democracies share with Israel in terms of targeting civilians and ensuring safe passage of civilians whenever possible in a war zone. And this is a question today of shared values and how those are communicated. And while that requires standing with Israel against terror, it also requires standing for human rights for civilians in a war zone.
All right, Sara, really appreciate your time. Sara Yael Hirschhorn for us there, historian and political analyst at the University of Haifa.